Magnus. They played a game. They played another game. There was first the table bound game, then second Gukesh win again, and this is the third game. If Gukesh wins the third game, then it's GG's, right? So Magnus started off with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5. This is our Spanish game, Roy Lopez. This is what the grandmasters play, and the reason why Magnus is playing a line like this, as I told you guys, Magnus wants to outplay Gukesh. Magnus does not want the crazy stuff. All he wants is I'm gonna play a slow game. I'm gonna get a slight advantage. I'm gonna bring it to the end game, and I'm gonna beat you. That's how Magnus plays chess. Now Gukesh plays knight f6. Magnus plays d3, guarding the pawn. Now everybody's developing their pieces. Bishop c5. Gukesh is developing the pieces. Knight c3. Magnus is developing the pieces. I want you guys to keep in mind c3 followed by d4 is played more at the high level, but also keep in mind that this was a blitz game. So development is important. Castling is important. Gukesh castle the king. Usually I do not recommend this because it allows some immediate pins. Magnus took, giving up a bishop for a knight. Why would you give up a bishop for a knight? Is it because after takes he's able to win the pawn on e5? Did Magnus just win a pawn out of the opening? No, he played bishop to e3. Now, my question to the 400 rank players who is watching this video, what do you think Gukesh would have played if Magnus took this pawn on e5? Now, Magnus played bishop e3, and the move that Gukesh played here was puzzling. I want you guys to keep in mind that this is a bad bishop, and he decided to pull the bishop back on d6. Look on that bishop. The bishop is just pointing towards its own pawns. Like when you guys are playing, do not be playing chess if your bishops are just pointing towards their own pawn. But what did Magnus do here? He plays bishop to g5, moving the same piece more than once in the opening stage of the game, pinning this knight. What do we say when a piece is on your half of the board? What should you do? Immediately chase it away. That's what Gukesh did. And did Magnus give up another bishop for a knight? No, he did not do that. He pulled the bishop back to h4. He still wants to keep the bishop because if pawn to g5, then it's just exposing the king. He's not going to play pawn to g5. Plus, it was a blitz game. Now, everybody's saying Gukesh is slow. Gukesh is slow. But in the last game, Gukesh did not play slow. This is a blitz game, though. Bishop to g4 was played. A piece is on our half of the board again. What did Magnus do? Immediately chase away the bishop. Did Gukesh give up his bishop for a knight? Yes. Why are you giving up a bishop for a knight? Have a look on the evaluation bar though. Magnus took with the queen, applying pressure to this knight on f6. And then what did Gukesh do? Pull the bishop back to e7. The same bishop. This bishop is being overworked. And I want you guys to pay attention to this bishop, the dark squared bishop. It's a bad bishop because the pawn on e5 is on a dark square. Magnus played bishop takes f6. Now, this was a Magnus type of move. Like, obviously, we don't want to be giving up our bishops for knights, but this was just a Magnus move. Like, the engine didn't approve of this move. It's just one of those Magnus moves. Magnus saw. I want you guys to see how far in the end game Magnus saw. But let's continue. Let's continue. He plays g3, by the way, not castling his king. Weird guy. Queen to d7. And then he plays h4. He's putting his pawns on dark squares, even though Gukesh has dark squared bishop. And then after bishop back to e7, he finally castles his king. Now, the bishop is better on this diagonal for sure. That's definitely where we want to have the bishop. The bishop is also on the same line as the king, and Magnus was like, nope, let's not do that. And then Gukesh plays bishop to d4. Now, after bishop to d4, Magnus played knight to e2. Like, is this just a free pawn? Like, why didn't Gukesh take the pawn? Was that a free pawn? Let me know down in the comments. Why didn't Gukesh just take the pawn? He pulls the bishop back to b6 though, and then Magnus plays g4. Look on that g. First of all, g4 is an inaccuracy. That's what the computer says. I like g4. The reason why I like g4 is because Magnus wants to play knight g3 followed by knight f5, sinking the knight on a light square, which is playing against a dark squared bishop, which is on the other side of the board, not really doing much. Gukesh plays g6. See, He's not gonna allow all of that. He sees this coming. He's not gonna allow it. And then Magnus still plays the move knight g3. And then once Gukesh plays queen e7, it's attacking the pawn on h4. Magnus guarded the pawn. We spoke about this. Magnus wants a calm game. He wants to attack though, but he doesn't want anything crazy because Gukesh is young. He's gonna just sacrifice something. Magnus doesn't want to allow that. So Rook d8 was played. Gukesh is bringing his rook in the game, and then Magnus plays a4. The purpose of a move like a4 is to play moves like a5, trapping the bishop, gaining space on the queen side. Gukesh does not allow that. Guy played a5, and then Magnus played queen back to e2. I want you guys to notice there's a lot of Magnus moves being playing. It's nothing too much. It's just slightly. Look on this. Queen e2, queen d2, king g7, pawn h4. Okay, pawn h4 is nice, not necessarily saying Magnus move. In this position, Gukesh had to find his next move because Magnus is threatening to take here, and then h6 becomes so weak, and then he's going to be attacking on the queen side. Gukesh does not want that. Gukesh plays queen g5, exchanging the queens off the board. Why would you trade the queens when you're playing with Magnus Carlsen? It's like the guy studied Endgame before he knew how to move the pieces. So Magnus just took the queen and then he plays knight f1. Where is Magnus trying to put the knight? Knight f1, knight d2, knight c4, hit the bishop, hit the weak pawn. We're now in the endgame. Rook to f6. The f pawn is being attacked twice. So Magnus played f3, guard the pawn. And I want you guys to look on Magnus's pawn. It's like all the pawns are now on light square, playing against a dark squared bishop. That's the end game strategy that I want you guys to use. Rook to f4. He took, open up the file for the rook. Pawn takes, rook to h3, guarding this pawn. Now, these are just very bad double pawns. Keep looking on the evaluation bar. Rook to h8, and that was Gukesh's first blunder. I want you guys to keep in mind that Gukesh was running out of time here. Magnus knows that Gukesh is not the fastest. He also had an advantage in that last game. So here Magnus was like, hey, I'm going to ensure that I play fast. The mistakes are coming. So he made his first mistake with blunder. And after take stakes knight e2, white is just better here. And the reason why white is better, and it's crazy, a rook and a bishop usually does better than a rook and a knight. But we're talking about Mr. Carlsen here. Rook to f6, knight to c4. Hit the bad bishop, hit the unprotected pawn, apply pressure to this pawn. Rook to e6 was played. Did Magnus take the bishop? Nah, Magnus wants to win the game. Rook to b1. And then Gukesh time was running out. And then Gary Kasparov was like, time doesn't matter here. Time doesn't matter. Magnus is going to win. But then Gukesh plays c5. Now, look on this bishop. We spoke about this bishop. Guys, if you have a bishop like this when you're playing chess, just resign. Unless you're Gukesh. Unless you're Gukesh. Magnus checked the king moves to g7, and then king to f2 was played. It's a mistake, The engine wanted him to put the rook back on a1, but Magnus didn't really want to be repeating any moves. Plus, Gukesh was in some severe time pressure, so Magnus was just following endgame principles. In the endgame, the king needs to be activated. Activate the king. Gukesh pulls back the bishop, and then Magnus took a pawn on a5. Now, Gukesh had to do something. It's like if you do not move the bishop, like what's the difference between this bishop and a pawn? There's no difference. That's a tall pawn. It can't move. I mean, the best it could do here is move backward. Being a pawn would have been better for that bishop because at least it would have been able to move forward. So he pulls the bishop back, lose the pawn, and then he plays pawn to c4. Like he's just trying to activate his bishop. But Magnus was like, okay, king e2 takes, king takes. I'm gonna be activating my king. I want you guys to look how Magnus plays this endgame. Rook to d6, king to c4. The guy is activating his king. He's allowing Gukesh to put the rook on the second. Gukesh didn't do it. He's attacking the knight. Magnus took another pawn on b7. Have a look on the evaluation bar here. Gukesh took the pawn. Magnus played b4. This is called a pawn majority, by the way, where we have two pawns versus one pawn. The plan from here is just to push the pawns up the board. I want you guys to notice how useless this bishop is because all the pawns are on light squares. And then Gukesh plays rook back to a6. Rook to d1 was played. Rook needs files. The rook is going on the seventh. Rook c6 check. He pull his king back because he's not trying to lose this pawn on c2. And then after bishop to d4, he plays rook to d3. He's trying to prevent anything from going here. He's also trying to play c3 or even c4 himself. Now, after king to f6 was played, he chases away the bishop. Bishop has to move, which was a mistake. And then the rook is now on the seventh rank. Again, at this point in the game, Gukesh was severely low on time. And after rook to b6 was played, Magnus just took the pawn and Gukesh resigned. The game that Gukesh won is right here.